Alright, welcome back to another video. This video is going to be a little different from the other ones. Normally I do a little day in the life, but today I'm going to be just making a video of me talking pretty much just about, why athletes' mental health has become such a, important thing in sports and everything like that. And then I might get into something else. I haven't really decided yet, but let's start off with why mental health in sports has become such a big problem or become so important. So pretty much to start off, I just want to say whenever I'm scrolling through social media stuff like that, I'm always seeing videos of athletes who are struggling with mental health problems and stuff like that. And I think it's really important, and I feel like people don't bring as much awareness to it as they should, because we just lost we lost a life to a mental health illness. Marshawn Kneeland, he was a player for the Dallas Cowboys. He ended up, taking his own life, and it sucks that people do these things, but it's very real, and a lot of people do it, and it sucks. And there are many reasons why athletes do it and why athletes have these mental health problems, and I sort of want to get into it so that I can show you guys the signs a little bit of like what's going on. But pretty much a lot of athletes, they're so caught up in getting to that next level. As high schoolers, most kids are looking at going to college, and most kids are looking at playing in college. And to be honest, as an athlete myself, I sometimes catch myself doing this a lot, which is comparing myself to other athletes. I compare myself to my teammates sometimes, and I compare myself to kids in the state. I compare myself to those ranked kids and see am I really good enough to make it to the next level? And I feel like that's not something that I should be doing. I know that's not something that I should be doing, because one thing that I have realized is that everyone is at a different point in their life. Everyone's at a different point in their journey, and you really don't know like when you're gonna become a lot better of an athlete. Some people peak earlier in their career in high school and college, and some people peak later in their career in college and pro ball. It really all depends upon you as an athlete. You can't really compare yourselves to other people, because you guys have totally different play styles too. Like, you're not going to play the game the same as other people are. Like, yeah, maybe some aspects might be, but not all. So that's it for pretty much comparison, because I feel like comparison is a huge part of athletes and social media and stuff like that. So yeah, um, comparison kills confidence. That's all I have to say for that. So that's it for comparison. And next up, I think I'm going to talk about the understanding of underperforming, and people who have high hopes for you. So as athletes, I think I was seeing these videos online, and I think Draymond said something really well. We're out here performing all these games in a season. I don't know exactly how many games are in the NBA, but he went out and said, we have to come out here day in and day out and perform for you guys, perform for our teammates, and put on entertainment for you guys. And that really put into perspective how hard these guys have to work, because if they don't perform at their highest level, they're gone. Like they don't get to play pro ball anymore. So that's not only physically draining, that's also mentally draining. And when it comes to those type of things, being physically drained and mentally drained is eventually going to lead to mental health problems and stuff like that. So having all these high expectations, stuff like that, like it's not good for you. But sometimes it's not something that you can control. You got to have sometimes high expectations as an athlete, but you got to learn how to take in those high expectations. Let's say you're supposed to be one of the top hitters on the team, and you're really one of the average or bottom hitters on the team. It's all good. You just got to find ways to work around it, and I feel like sometimes it's hard as an athlete because you feel like you're underperforming, and when you feel like you're underperforming, you feel like you're undervalued or you're not valued on the team at all, and then that's when kids start to quit. That's when kids start to develop mental health problems, and even adults too, and not only kids. But it is really a huge problem, and I feel like people need to understand that just because you're underperforming doesn't mean you aren't valued on that team. You still have very much important roles on that team. Look at a guy like Miguel Rojas. He didn't hit a home run for I think like a whole month or two, and he ends up hitting a home run in Game 7 of the World Series to tie it up. Your time will eventually come. You just gotta wait your turn and understand that you're there for a reason. Just like we all are on Earth for a reason. We're all here for a reason, and when you're playing your sport, you're playing your sport for a reason too. And then I think one more aspect that I wanted to get into here was just, competition. When you're competing against guys from your team and from other teams, and it gets to a point where you are practicing every single day. You're putting in 2 hours into the weight room, an hour and a half into the cages, into practicing. That's 3.5 hours. That's around a whole day in a week of practicing, and it can get to be draining sometimes. And I feel like as athletes, we need to learn when to take a step away from the game and value our mental side of our lives, because it's also very important to get away from the game, just to take a little reset. That's why I do my little reset days sometimes whenever I feel like I'm getting a little too busy, because being busy sometimes isn't the best. I try to be as busy as possible, because I don't like being at home. Not because anything's going on or anything like that, but just because when I am home, normally I'm in my room either playing video games, laying in my bed watching TV, stuff like that, and that's when I start to overthink and stuff like that. So it's not really the best for me. So that's why I'm trying to be gone as much as possible. That's why I'm working 2 jobs. That's why I'm doing these volunteer opportunities that I get. So just being busy is very important to me, but also learning when to take a step back and comprehend how I'm doing mentally and physically and stuff like that, because your health is more important than becoming a better baseball player, becoming a better athlete, and that's something that I will stand on. Your health is way more important than how good of an athlete you are. So that's pretty much that for being busy and stuff like that. But yeah, to go back to my point on competition, when you're competing with your teammates and stuff like that, it can really get to you, because you might not feel like you're as far as you need to be, and you might start comparing yourselves again to your teammates and seeing oh, I'm not as good as this guy, I'm not as good as that guy. It really, at the end of the day, doesn't matter. Yeah, it matters that you're not as good as them, but it also doesn't then at the same time, because you're on that team for a reason. You've been put on that team. And you just got to understand your role, I feel like, and understand why you are on that team. And when you do, I feel like you'll become a lot better of an athlete when you understand your role, because then you'll be able to understand if you're completing your role, if you're not completing your role, because not every guy's point in a game is, or role, not every guy's role is to hit doubles. Sometimes you need those guys who can get bunt base hits or slap a single down the right field line, steal bases, be a defensive wizard out in the field. Everyone has their own unique little ability, and everyone has their own little understanding of who they are as an athlete, and I feel like that's really important too. When you feel like you're being undervalued, or you feel like you're underplaying, or whatever the word is for it. But yeah, that's pretty much all that I have for that part too. So one last thing that I wanted to get into here before this video ends, I just wanted to say, if you guys are struggling with problems, I'm not telling you have to go reach out to a professional. Sometimes talking to a friend, a coach, a family member can really be so helpful. I'm gonna get a little vulnerable here and bring up my little part in this, and where I fit in. I was a guy on the team. I played JV. Most of my team had all played on varsity. I played on JV most of the year, and we get into our first tournament, and I think I might have went 1 for 11, 1 for 9 maybe. I struck out. I struck out a handful of times, and I honestly, I'm gonna be completely honest. I started tearing up in right field because I was like, oh my, this is so much different than JV baseball, and I had been getting so overwhelmed with the fact like I have to do this for the next 3 or 4 months, you know, and I really was nervous that I wasn't going to be able to perform at my highest, and I was going to let people down. But then towards the middle and end of the season, I started batting a lot better and doing a lot better on the team, and I ended up, I think I was like third best on the team with like a 360 batting average or something like that. So you can't really let the mental side of the game get to you, because if you do, it can really tank you as an athlete, and you just gotta you have to be really positive, because once you start thinking negative, you're gonna start doing negative things, and it's gonna start affecting you. It's gonna start affecting your team, and it's just gonna snowball all the way down. So, what I want to say is, if you do need help, please reach out to someone. You can even reach out to me. I would love to talk to you. Love to help you guys become a little bit more a little bit better mentally, as that's something that I'm trying to do as well. But please don't be afraid to reach out to someone. You are loved, you are cared for, and you do have a reason here. So yeah, that's all that I wanted to say. So yeah, I sort of just flew by the seat of my pants for this video. I didn't really plan anything. I just sort of started talking. But one thing that I wanted, actually, before I end this, I also want to get into one more little topic, and it's like, this problem isn't just with kids. So it's not like it's a brain development thing. Look at guys like, A.J. Brown and Kyrie Irving, two pro players who are all-stars, who have been having, mental struggles as well, due to their careers and due to, where they are at their life. So don't be like afraid that like you're going through this, because there's so many other people who are going through this as well, and so many people who really should be doing good in life, like AJ Brown and Kyrie Irving. These guys are multi-million-dollar players who are also having these same problems. So don't feel like you're alone, because there are people who are a lot more successful who are having these same problems. So that's pretty much it for this video. I just wanted to get a video out on why I think mental health has become so important to athletes, and what really is a big deal in sports. So I just thought I'd bring a little bit of awareness to that. And I need to get a video out to you guys, so I decided why not make this. So that's going to be it for this video. If you like what you see, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to turn on post notifications whenever it is live. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.